back to my channel. My name is Bex, B-E-X. I'm feeling like Ariana Grande. I'm finally ready to talk to you guys about 1L. Finally ready to share it all with you guys. I was kind of sort of explaining on my Instagram, which you should go follow, Bex not Bex _, about how sort of like my day-to-day has been going since starting my summer job. And it was a little hectic to start off with, a little overwhelming, not gonna lie. Just trying to figure out like what is the balance of work, how do how do I manage my workload, how do I show my enthusiasm for wanting to be there and wanting to get as much work and as much exposure as possible, but also be very realistic and practical about what I really can handle, considering this is my my first summer. I've never really experienced this before. So how do you do that little dance without overburdening yourself, but also without seeming like you lack initiative? That was the first couple of weeks. I'm officially in my 4th week of my internship, so I finally feel like, almost after a month, I finally feel like I'm in a groove and I can kind of go back to posting a little bit more regularly. I just really wanted to focus in and have a good start to the summer. I'm basically gonna kind of just debrief with you guys about how the spring went, and then sort of my takeaways, and then kind of finish off with what I learned and answering some of your questions that you asked on Instagram. So we're just gonna get right into it. Just to debrief super quickly about how the spring went. The spring it had really high highs and then also had really low lows. I think I felt the same way about that I felt the same way about the fall semester in terms of just kind of it being up and down. But I would say that in the fall semester, it was really a lot like the ups and the downs weren't they weren't as dramatic, and I could just be exaggerating, but I felt like this past semester, the highs and the lows were significantly different from one another. They were way more dramatic and exaggerated than the first semester, which I was very taken aback by, because I thought my second semester, having a semester under my belt, I'm walking in chest out, head held high, yeah, I got this. I got 1 semester under my belt. Girl, bye. Starting off this semester having to focus on getting a job, especially being that I kind of put pressure on myself to want to get a job before March. I really didn't want to continue dragging out that process, and I'm sure I mentioned that in some of my vlogs earlier in the year, probably around March, where I was it was a very, very stressful time for me from about, from end of January to the end of February. That whole month, it was very hard for me to focus on school because I was so pressed about getting a job. That balance of wanting to really approach this semester, really being trying to start off on a good foot on the right foot with school, but also really wanting to get a job. Those two were just constantly those two sides of me were constantly at war, and it made it difficult for me to focus. Not only because it was difficult for me to focus kind of mentally, it was also just very emotionally taxing, trying to invest myself into presenting myself in the best way possible for the jobs. I was having interviews right after classes, in between classes, just fighting for my life trying to get this job, right? If you guys remember, I really was insecure about my grades last semester. Again, I got a B+ average, so it wasn't even anything I was failing. It was just that I was so concerned that not being in the top 10% of my class was gonna mean that I was not going to get a job this summer, and that I was gonna have to drag this process out throughout the whole semester, which was something I knew I don't think I could have mentally or emotionally handled that. I would have survived, but it would have been really hard. That month was me trying to get through interviews while also catching up on readings, while also focusing on writing my brief. So there were a lot of things at play, and once I finally got the job at the end of February, things were kind of looking up, but then the brief rolled around and kind of gave me that nice little 1-2 when I thought that I was ready to come back up. I was like, whoa, what happened? I got the job out of the way, that was a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, I should be, Unfortunately, I thought that life was going to get easier just because I got a job, and it didn't. It was another thing where it was like I was again at war with myself, because there was a part of me that was like, Rebecca, this is only a 2-credit class. And then there was another part of me that was like, yeah, but this is writing, and writing is important, and you want to make sure that like you give it your all and you care about all your grades, and you know what I mean? So it was just at war where it was like, okay, mathematically speaking, like this has the least amount of impact on my GPA, but in my heart of hearts, I really want to do well, and I really want to have an end product that I'm proud of. It also goes towards your moot court tryouts, and at that time in March, I was considering trying out for moot court. So I was like, I do want to write a good brief. I do want to do well on my oral argument, because that'll all have implications for whether or not I would make it onto moot court. So that was March. March was me at odds with myself, being like, why are you spending so much time and effort on this brief, to the point where I was falling behind in some classes in terms of reading. That also wasn't the only writing assignment I had. For my elective class, which was international law, I had to write some memos for that. Like some assignments were memos, some assignments were just papers. Like, so I also had to focus on that, and that's a 3-credit class, right? So it was really a battle about like balancing all of this. And you know, when you really care about each and every class, you have to start making some deals with yourself, and that was really what March was about, and going into the beginning of April. April comes around, and now I'm starting to really feel the pressure of finals coming up. My first final was going to be April 28th. April rolls around, we're finishing up with the brief, we're finishing up with oral arguments, and now moot court tryouts are popping up, and you're also thinking, okay, I'm really gonna have to start intensifying my study schedule for finals. At this point, I'm just like, okay, we've got to do some cost-benefit analysis here, right? I was like, do I want to try out for moot court, which is probably gonna take another 1.5 weeks of prep, when I'm 5 weeks out from my final exams? Do I really think that where I'm at right now, being that I was playing catch up all of March with readings, barely getting in the amount of studying that I wanted to get in on the weekends, like, do I really think I'm in a place to try out for moot court? Also, where is this desire for me to try out for moot court coming from? Like, is it coming from a place of me genuinely wanting to do it because I want to go into litigation and I want to, you know, I think it would be really good experience? Or is it coming from this place of everybody else is doing it, I don't want to feel left out, I don't want to feel insecure for looking lazy? And when I really did that self-reflection, I realized that it was actually the latter. It was me not wanting to look like I was the lazy of the bunch that decided that she wasn't going to try out for moot court when everybody else and their mama was trying out for moot court. Once I kind of came to that realization and I was honest with myself, I realized that I don't have to do it. Like, I just don't have to do it. And I can focus on what's more important, which are the classes that are going to actually impact my grade, my GPA, right? I had already registered for moot court tryouts, and then I pulled out. That was probably the lightest I had felt all semester, because all semester it felt like every single day something was either pulling for my attention, or something was like feeling like was just another weight on top of me, whether it was raising like I literally got a puppy this semester, so that's another added thing. And we're just gonna not even talk about that, because my only suggestion to you is only get a puppy if you have the help and the resources to do so. Otherwise, save yourself the trouble until you are at a point in your life where you can really dedicate the time to training and raising a puppy. Now, I honestly wouldn't have changed it for the world, because now she really truly provides me the companionship that I've really been looking for. But beforehand, while I was in it and we were both losing sleep together, I was in a dark place. So my point is that at every single moment in this past semester, except for that day I decided not to try out for moot court, I just felt like there was so much pressure on top of me. And so when I finally made that decision for myself, and I was honest with myself about whether or not I really wanted to do this, and then I made the decision to just pull out, I felt so much better. And that really was like another lesson for me, in that, you know, this stuff is different. This is the most that I've ever been like academically challenged, and I think that it took a toll on me mentally and emotionally and physically, obviously, but it was a lot of like a mind game, or it just messed me up mentally, because it made me feel like am I as smart as I think I am? Like, am I just weak? Am I inadequate? Like, why is it that I can't seem to you know, why do I constantly feel like so stressed out about school in a way that I've never felt before? And I think that that's just the nature of law school. Like, it's literally that hard, right? At least for the first year. I don't know what the next year is going to be like, but for that first year, it's just new and it's demanding. You lose sleep. That sleep deprivation gets to you. Now you're not only, you know, physically tired, but you're also like mentally and emotionally vulnerable. And I got to some really dark places this semester. So when I finally made that decision for myself and realized like I don't have to put that pressure on myself if I don't want to, it felt really good. And I think that that's one of the takeaways that I had from this whole year is like, you have to do what's for you. You have to be intentional about everything that you're doing, because this is like your career now, right? Like, this is real life. And I realized like I wasn't being intentional. I was really just hearing what other people said was going to get me a job, hearing what other people said was going to look good on my resume, and just trying to do that so that I would increase my chances and not, you know, fall behind the rest of the pack. But once I started realizing that like I can choose what I want to be a part of, I can choose how I want to spend my time, that definitely started to make me feel better. It's hard to get over that feeling like, am I not doing enough? But once you do, and once you are able to just pull the plug and make that decision of whether, you know, you are going to do it or you aren't going to do it, whether that's moot court or journal, or applying for certain jobs or positions, externships, clinics, like even the classes you choose, right? Like, some people will tell you, oh yeah, you should take this class. It's like, this is up to you, you know, and you have to have that right balance of like taking other people's advice, you know, people like your career advisors, your academic advisors, mentors. Like, it's a mixture of taking that advice and then also listening to yourself and what your plans are for your life, and being intentional about that, and then, you know, acting accordingly and making those decisions according to what it is that you want, basically. But it's hard to figure out what it is that you want, and so that's where I was like, well, okay, I don't know quite yet. I don't feel like I can make that decision of whether or not I want to be a litigator or if I want to be a transactional lawyer. And so in those moments, when I was trying to figure out about moot court or not, I was kind of just like, well, maybe I should just go ahead and try for moot court, because it's like, what if I do decide I want to be a litigator? Like, is not being on moot court going to ruin my chances of going into litigation? It's like, okay, you cannot predict everything that's going to happen later on down the road. But if I were to later on make that decision about going into litigation or something like that, like, I'm sure that I will figure out another plan for how I can get there, and not being on moot court is not going to demolish my chances of, you know, getting to that point. So I think it was just like having those conversations with yourself, reflecting and really being like, why am I doing this? Why am I going with the herd? Like, is it really because it's important to me, or is it because I see everyone else doing it and it would make me feel insecure that I wasn't doing it too? One of my biggest takeaways, right? Like, people always say to stay in your lane, and it's so true. It's so easy to get influenced by what other people are doing, because half the time you don't feel like you know what you're doing. And so you think that if other people, you know, seem to be so confident about going for a journal or going for a moot or going for this job and this externship, well, that must mean it's the thing that you're supposed to do. So, all right, I guess I'll do it too, right? There's no harm in trying to be ambitious, but you do have to realize, like, you have to be practical. You have to think about your mental health. And you also have to really think about, like, is this really something that you want to do? Like, okay, there's a difference between being ambitious, and then there's also a difference between just like doing stuff just to do stuff. So I think making that decision at that point in time was actually also really crucial, because it was at that moment that I felt light and I felt almost reinvigorated to start studying for finals. And luckily I had a great study group, and we were able to sort of tell each other, like, all right, now is the time. We're like 6 weeks out of finals. It's time to buckle down and really start getting after it. So that week we decided that from 8 to 10 every single night we were going to stay on FaceTime and just study, because we realized that, like, we could get ourselves to be pretty disciplined throughout the day, but it was right around dinner time, right around that like 6 to 8 o'clock period, where if we just ate dinner we could probably convince ourselves to just not study for the rest of the night and go to bed. But we knew that having those extra couple of hours to study was probably going to make it was probably going to make that bit of a difference, especially because of how late into the semester, we really like started to ramp up our study schedule. So at that point we were like, okay, let's put in some extra hours. Like we all knew we wanted, like at least for, you know, my study group, we really didn't want to stay up lately into the night. And so we were like, okay, what's a good amount of, like, you know, how can we hold ourselves accountable but still get to bed on time? And we felt like that period of 8 to 10 still gave us a break during dinner to kind of just eat and enjoy our dinner. And then afterwards we're like, hey, hello, excuse me, can you get on your computer please, because it's time for us to study. I'm telling you guys, that's definitely what made the difference for me, having a group of people. And it's like, it's not like we were always like quizzing each other or you know, testing each other on the material or even talking about the material. Like a lot of times it was literally just having accountability buddies, because I have no problem in saying that I like to have people around me who hold me accountable. And it's not so much that people have to like hold a gun to my head and tell me to work. Well, trust and believe there were some days like that, but not every single day. It was more so just knowing like other people are there, and especially being online, like it's hard to, you know, we can't be in the library every single day and stuff. So definitely another takeaway is like, as soon as you can, try to surround yourself with those types of people who are willing to go the extra mile with you and for you, because they care about not only their success, but also your success. That was something that I really felt in my study groups. Was like, it wasn't so much that we were only in it for ourselves. Like we really wanted to see each other win. We knew what each other was capable of, but we also knew each other's weaknesses. Like my weakness was getting up early in the morning, and my study buddy knew that. And there were times, especially in the first semester, where I would be like, bro, can you please text me to wake up in the morning to make sure that I'm up and ready to go? And she would do it. That's the type of relationships that you really want to try and create as soon as you possibly can in your first year, because it will make all the difference for you when you can suffer with other people, and when those people want to see you win. Having that study group at night really, really helped. We went through the rest of the semester kind of just doing that, and then once classes ended and we were in that like week-long reading period, it wasn't even a week long, it was probably like freaking couple days. Once we were in our reading period, we were able to sort of extend those study sessions out longer, and we would either meet up and study during the day, and then we would still do those nightly sessions on FaceTime. For those of people who were kind of asking me about what my study schedule was like, from, you know, about 5 to 6 weeks out, I still had classes, so I would have to go to class during the day. But then after class, I would take a little break, because I really needed to like integrate breaks in there so that I would stay mentally okay, and then go at it with the studying. It was hard to kind of balance, because it was like you had to start studying, but it wasn't like readings stopped. Like we were still reading the textbook and reading cases leading up to exams. Like that reading period really the reading period was not enough time for me personally, but we were still reading cases, we were still reading textbook. Stop. No. Up until practically like the day of the exam. So that being the case, all right, we still had to read for classes while we're also studying for our exams. That was tough. That was really, really tough. And so we had to be efficient with our studying. A lot of it was just like, you know, for example, I didn't recreate new outlines. I only made one new outline for my property class, because that professor, it was her first time teaching at Emory. So there weren't any outlines for her from the outline bank where the 2 L's and the 3 L's from the Black Law Student Association, where they put outlines. Like there weren't any for her, because this was her first time teaching. So I had to make an outline from scratch for that class. But for all my other classes, I used outlines from upperclassmen, because I knew that they'd gotten A's in those classes, and there was simply not enough time for me to spend creating outlines when that time should be spent taking practice exams, looking at hypos, taking quizzes, you know, quizzing myself with flashcards. So that was probably one of the bigger differences from last semester, where I made more outlines from scratch. And it's not even so much that I made outlines from scratch. I definitely just like most of the time I was transcribing previous outlines just more so into my own words, and using those that I created for my exams. This time I literally used verbatim, didn't even recreate those outlines, and instead I just tried to make sure I knew them front, back, and center, and I would be like using them for practice exams. Professors give out practice hypotheticals. I also use websites like Quimby and Barbary that give me practice questions. I wouldn't do it by myself, but you know, me and my study group, sorry about that, we had to pick up little Ruru. I would take practice exams with my study buddies. That was another thing that we would do either in person or over FaceTime. And sometimes it would be like we would have class in the morning, and then during our break before another class, we would take a quick practice exam. And I've talked about this before, but again, when I take practice exams, it's not like I'm taking the full 4-hour exam. I'm probably just doing one hypothetical question, which would take between 45 minutes to an hour for me to finish, because that was usually all the time that I even had in those breaks in between classes to take the practice test. So that's what I mean when I say we're taking practice exams. We're not doing 4 hours or even 3 hours. At most an hour and a half, trying to do maybe like 2 questions in a row or 1 question. I mean, a lot of these practice hypos also had multiple parts to it, so it would be like one question, but it had, you know, a B and a C parts to it. So it just sort of depended on the question and how much time we would have. But that was one of, and still to this day I stand by this, one of my takeaways is like, when it comes to studying, like reviewing is super important, and that's obviously what you do if you decide to make your own outline, or if you're just reading through an outline that somebody else made. But when it comes to reviewing, like, nothing helps you as much as like quizzing yourself, taking practice exams, getting exposure to the different hypos. Like sometimes it wouldn't even be that we were sitting there and writing out a whole exam answer. Most of the time, especially towards the end, it was just about walking through how you would answer it, right? Maybe putting a timer on yourself just to like see, okay, how long would it take me to answer this one. But most of the time it was just about outlining an answer just to see like, okay, let me do bullet points and see if I hit all the issues. Let me see if I, how long it would take me to sort of hit everything in an outline, right? Because that's essentially what you do when you take the exam. You probably outline your answer really, really quickly, and then, you start typing just to have some sort of organization, because professors tend to like when your answers are, a little bit more organized, put together, because it just makes it easier for them to read through the hundreds of papers that they're reading. But like I said, like that's my main suggestion to you when people are asking me, how do I study? It's like, well, one, I mean, it's not like I'm out here getting all A's. I'm not. So maybe you don't want to listen to me, but I got just about the same GPA that I got last semester, and I said like I have a B+ average. So if you want to know what gets you a B+, that's trying to be as efficient as possible, not trying to recreate the wheel. Maybe if I made all of my outlines from scratch, like maybe I would have gotten more A's. I don't know. I didn't do it, so I can't really tell y'all. But I do know that some people who do, who have gotten some of the better grades, like they highly suggest making your own outlines. But then I've also heard from other people who get really good grades that they didn't make any of their outlines and they just used those that they found from upperclassmen. So it's just all going to be about how you use the outlines. Like once you everybody can have a really great outline, right? But it's like, one, is it efficient in that when you're taking your exam, you know exactly where to find all the information that you might need? And do you know it well enough that, when you're taking these exams, you might not even have to look at it as much because you've studied it and you've used it for practice exams so much. Another thing, when people asked about my study habits and how I prepared for finals, I don't know if you guys remember from my last video, I said that I really wanted to start utilizing my weekends better, because I felt like that was one of my weak points of the fall semester, was like I just didn't think that I made good use of my weekends, because I realized like that's gonna be the biggest chunk of time that I ever get during the week, and I don't want to just waste it reading for class. Like I really want to make sure I'm using that time to review for my courses. That didn't happen this semester. It is what it is now, right? But I do think that part of why it didn't work out to the extent that I wish it had is because I didn't come at it with a plan. And I also, like I've mentioned earlier in this video, there were just so many things I didn't expect were going to happen, such as I didn't expect myself to be so consumed by the job search process. Like I didn't foresee that. Like I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be, a little stressful, but to the extent that I was starting to like just get so wrapped up about it, like I did not see that coming. I also thought that this semester was going to be significantly easier than the first semester because I had a semester under my belt. That caught me by surprise. I think I've had to read significantly more this semester than I did in the fall. That reading, I was probably reading about like 20 pages per class a night. This semester I was reading, even one class alone, I was reading over 150 pages a week. And if you have a class, say maybe twice a week, you're probably reading, at least for my other classes on average, I was reading around 30 pages per night. And so I had the class twice a week, so I'm probably reading 60 pages per week for that class. For one class, my international law class, I was reading over 150 pages per week for 3 credits. So I'm not great at math, but something about that doesn't add up for me. And that was really stressful. Not really seeing some of these things coming, and then also in combination with that, not having a great plan for exactly how I was gonna execute studying on the weekends and making the best use of time on the weekends, really bit me in the butt, especially because the weekends also ended up being the time where I spent a lot on most of the time on the weekends I was spending my time on the brief. So that assignment, y'all, to this day it irks me to my core because, and that is, I don't know if that's an issue I have with Emory or law school in general or just my professor, but the fact that that brief really consumed as much of my time as it did for it to only be worth 2 credits really irked me. And maybe I only have myself to blame because I could have made the executive decision to just not sacrifice, time from my other classes for a 2-credit class. At the same time, I have to give myself some grace because I'm trying to treat all my classes as if they were equal, So again, it could have been my own fault, but it's really hard to think that way when you really just want to do well in everything. So that took up a lot of my weekends, and I realized very quickly that my weekends, the amount of weekends I was gonna have were dwindling, right? Especially in April. I was like, well, I only have a month left, so how am I gonna maximize my time? And so a lot of it was just trying to find efficient ways to study. I made flashcards instead of recreating whole outlines, and that was a quick way for me to still write things down because it's really important for me to write stuff down. And so I tried my best to figure out, okay, what was another way that I can still write down to help my memory with some of these things, especially key rules and their elements. And what was the quickest way for me to do that? And for me, it was writing down flashcards because it's quick, concise, and a great tool for me to quiz myself, especially when I have some downtime, and also another opportunity to get away from my computer because staring at that screen all day was just killer. That was one way I tried to, I tried to be a little bit more efficient, taking quick practice exams eventually towards the end. I was taking multiple practice exams, but that was because I was really just going through how I would answer them and then checking my answer based on, and seeing, okay, what issues did I hit? What did I miss? What's not working for me right now? Those are just quick ways for me to sort of test and assess where I was at, because again, it was week after week, it was okay, time is ticking and we're getting down to the wire here. My biggest takeaway from that really is to just start studying as soon as you can and prioritize what really should be prioritized. It's hard for you to wrap your head around the fact that a 2-credit class just isn't as important as a 4-credit class, but try your hardest to wrap your head around that, because it will save you a lot of strife later on down the road when you haven't wasted as much time as I did on a class that just simply isn't going to have as big of an impact on your GPA. It's good to have that end product of a solid, writing sample, especially for jobs and stuff, but when it comes to getting your 1L job, they're really only going to look at whatever writing sample you had from your first semester anyway, so that second semester at least. it's probably not going to matter as much as whatever you wrote for your first semester assignment. The key takeaway I have is like, start studying it as soon as you can. As soon as you start feeling like you guys have gone over enough material where you can start reviewing. I mean, that honestly for me was probably as soon as like 3 weeks into the semester, especially the spring semester. The first semester I didn't even really know what outlining was. I didn't really know what reviewing was, so there was kind of a learning curve there. But the second semester, we were plowing through material, especially in classes like property and my international law class, where 3 weeks in, you've got just about enough material to start reviewing. That is something that I highly suggest for you to at least try to start figuring out, like your first year in your first semester. Try and figure out how you're going to review, how you're going to outline. Maybe you're not starting to do those things just yet in the first couple of weeks, but start inquiring and asking upperclassmen, like, okay, what do you think, what did you do? Did you have this professor? Like, how do you think I should study? What should I start doing? Start to figure out, okay, what's my plan of attack going to be, so that right around the 3 to 4 week mark, you can actually start implementing some of those study strategies, and then you're off to a good start. And throughout the semester, it's a much more sustainable and practical way to begin your semester versus being down, trying to get everything together within the last month and a half. Again, I survived, I made it out alive, but like, I'm trying to be a resource to y'all. Okay, listen to me. Look at me and listen to me. Start studying as soon as you can. And that's gonna look different for everyone. Maybe that just means you start making flashcards now so that you could be reviewing them throughout the semester. Maybe that means you start outlining now, because you might be slower at reviewing through all that material, all your reading, all your cases. Figure out, first of all, if you even want to recreate, if you want to create an outline from scratch, or if you just want to use an outline from the outline bank. So if that's the case, maybe what you do is start reviewing those outlines and then start figuring out, okay, let me start doing like little baby hypos first, like small hypos. Maybe I just do quizzes on Quimby first. I keep talking about Quimby. Quimby is a website that I highly suggest you get an account for. It is a little pricey, so for me, I split my account with a friend, and if you're able to do that and you have the funds to do so, I highly suggest you try and find a buddy and say, let's just go half on this, because Quimby saved my life. All right, some people shit on Quimby, and I don't know why, because I don't know what Quimby ever did to them. Quimby has only ever done amazing things for me in my life. All right, I owe it all to Quimby, and I think that it's just a great resource. Like, there are practice exams on there, there are course reviews, there's lessons on there, there are even outlines on there, flashcards, practice exams, like everything that you really need to review for every class that you take, at least in the first year. I don't know why people try to make it seem like Quimby is a bad thing, just because some people use it and don't read for class. But best believe, in those weeks where I was falling behind on some readings, your girl was on Quimby getting those case briefs. Realizing that I literally, as always, I've been chatting and chatting and chatting. I'm just gonna address one more thing that people were asking about. Some other people were asking about jobs, and so I'm going to address that in a separate video, like how I got the job that I have now, and what that experience has sort of been like, and I'll definitely address that in a later video. I kind of want to keep this just about school. The other thing that people were asking me about was like my mental health and how I kind of overcame some of those obstacles. I will say, like, I've never really experienced some of the mental lows that I was at throughout the semester. A lot of it was like due to the isolation. I chose to be completely online this semester, and that kind of took a toll on my mental health. Some other things that took a toll on my mental health was the sleep deprivation. I was at some points there was like a couple weeks where I was just really getting like less than 5 hours of sleep per night, and that does a lot to the old brain up here. And when I don't get enough sleep, I'm more irritable, I'm more emotional, and so it was really hard for me to, those moments, it was hard for me to stay positive. I won't lie to you guys, and you kind of saw that in my absence, like when I just wasn't making as many videos, or I wasn't really posting on Instagram, and like that was because I just didn't want to be a Debbie Downer for everyone else. Like, we all go through really hard things. And so, and I also think that as much as I want to be like authentic on this channel and like really be transparent about how law school is, I also don't think that people want to watch depressing videos. So I had to like, you know, I had to take a step away for a little bit and then come back and share my feelings like in a more mature way or whatever. But there were some low points there, and I really think that the best thing that you can do, again, I keep stressing it, but is like trying to find as best of a community in law school as you can. And that doesn't even mean a huge group of people. Like, sometimes that's just 2 or 3 people, and it makes all the difference, because you might have friends from home or, you know, your family or whatever, but no one really understands what it's like to go through this stuff. They can just struggle there with you, you know? It just makes you feel better. Honestly, like, the trauma bonding you do in law school is ridiculous, but it gets you through. Another thing that I did to kind of cope with some of like the stress and anxiety I was feeling was figuring out, like, was really trying to prioritize working out for me. That's like a personal thing that definitely does help me feel better. So I really tried to prioritize working out, having that exercise, going outside, because I was sitting inside all the time, and that lack of vitamin D was, I think, really eating away at me. So trying to, luckily getting Rue, actually, having to take her out all the time actually really helped with my mental health, I think, because although it was stressful trying to train her as a puppy, having to go on walks and being outside for an hour, you know, to take her for a walk, like, that actually really helped me get my body moving and just help me stay, you know, get away from my desk. So that was actually a real blessing in disguise. Another thing that I really tried to prioritize was implementing breaks into my day. I think in the fall semester, because of like the excitedness and I was just so eager, like, I could go kind of the whole week without like not any breaks, but I'm just saying, like, I didn't necessarily need to like take breaks several times throughout the day. I could kind of just go throughout the week and then like take my big breaks on like Friday nights and Saturday nights. But this semester I really had to implement breaks into my day. So like, whether that's working out and then taking a break to just sort of eat a snack and chill, maybe watch an episode of something, or after dinner taking an hour-long break before I started my FaceTime session with my study group. And it wasn't just like little breaks here and there. Like, I would need like an hour and to just decompress, get away from my desk, whether that's go for a walk with Rue, whatever I felt like I needed that day. And I'm very much so a person where it's like, I do have a routine, but I'm also okay with every day not looking the same, and I recognize that, and I'm like flexible in that, because I don't want to be stuck with like the rigidity of like having to be, okay, I have to do this and this at the same time every single day. It's like, no, some days I'm just not feeling like working out in the morning and I want to work out at night. Some days I want to work out in the morning and I want to work out, you know, I want to just chill at night. So I'm very aware of that, with like that being my personality, and it actually works for me, because, you know, you can plan for a day to look a certain way and something else will come up, or you will have procrastinated, and I just plan for that type of stuff because I just know that that's how life goes. But those things were what helped me the most with my mental health, is just like surrounding myself with good people who are similar to me and who approach school the same way, you know, like people who, we really care about our grades, but we also really prioritize our mental health, and we want to like relax when we want to relax. So we would go out for dinner on Friday nights, or, you know, we would just go and try and like go to somebody's house and watch a movie and have a wine night and things like that. Like, trying to have that balance, right, and still have fun, but also, you know, still care about our grades and trying to do the best that we can, obviously. If you don't have that balance for your mental health, you will crumble. So try and figure out what's important to you, what helps you feel better, whatever makes you feel, you know, reinvigorated, what gives you that boost of energy, whether it's working out or talking to people, if you're a social person, going out, going to the park, like whatever it is that you need to kind of like give you that like that mood boost, go and do that and figure out ways to start implementing that into your life, into your flow, so that, you know, the last thing I will say, and I think that this kind of encompasses it all, is like, when people were telling me that this is a marathon and not a sprint, I was thinking that this is a marathon from one semester to the end of that semester. No, the marathon is from the day 1 of 1L to your last exam in 1L. I had to learn that the hard way, I think, because I was so eager and like so just like determined in my first semester, and you think like, oh, you're gonna get a 2-month break, so, you know, or a month break, whatever, however long you get in winter before you come for the next semester. So like you know, you're thinking like, I'll be recharged, I'll be replenished, and then you don't realize that whole time you're just spending it trying to get a job. So you never get that feeling of like rest, honestly, because you're just going. If it's not one thing, it's another. So the real marathon is really getting from the very beginning all the way through trying to get a job to your last exam of 1L. And so that's why I say try to really figure out what it is that you need personally for your mental health based on the things that you've already been through, and how you can start to integrate that. And a lot of it is going to be trial and error, like figuring out when's the right time to work out, what's your schedule like, you know, what can you really handle in the first semester. But once you finally figure that out, really try and prioritize that and figure out what needs to be, what maybe isn't as important, so that you can actually have a sustainable flow of things, you know, when it comes to your study schedule and how you maintain your mental health, that can last you all the way through the first year. Because I will tell you that the enthusiasm for the first year dies off very quickly. You will not be in March still going off the happy-go-lucky juice that you had in the first semester. No ma'am. I was on fumes by March. I was on fumes. And it got me to the end of the semester, but I don't want other people to feel the way that I felt at that point in the semester. Please heed my advice, heed my caution when I say that it is so important for you to figure out what that is going to be for you in your first semester, so that you can have those outlets, you can have those breaks that you need, and you can sustain, you know, so that you can sustain yourself all the way through the first year, because it will take a lot out of you. It's hard, is what I'm trying to say. It's just hard, okay? And having those things, I think, will just at least help you not crumble under the pressure, because you'll find ways to sort of express that mental and emotional stress, you know, other ways to kind of get it out. That's it. That's my wrap up. I know I didn't make it short like I said I was going to, and that's just that. That's me just trying to like spill out everything that I can into this video, because I really do want you guys to like know what it was like. All right, I really hope that you take some of my advice. I hope that you find some of this useful, and I really hope that you guys have a great week, and I hope that I will see you in my next video. So catch y'all later, and thanks for watching. Bye.